Then from the heights a greater voice came down. The word that touches the heart and finds the soul. The voice of light after the voice of night. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the soul, that all in thee may reach its absolute. God must be born on earth and be as man, that man, being human, may grow even as God. Cast off thy mind, step back from form and name, annul thyself, that only God may be.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 7, the Book of Yoga, Canto 6, Nirvana and the All-Negating Absolute. And we've come to page 535, 14 lines down. I don't know the number. I have created all I devour. So Savitri hearing the voice from the summit of her being, went in search of her soul, delving deep within, going into a trance, and penetrated through many layers of her inner being until eventually she found her soul hid deep within and united with it. Her psychic being united with the central being, the Jivatman above, the individual divine. And all her chakras opened, and she was able to express this divinity through all the different layers of her being, the different powers of her consciousness. Then she was, life continued, her life with Satchivan, and she was happy and fulfilled. She felt him with her at all times, even when he left to go into the forest. She still felt his presence. And then one night again, some deep fear surged up from within her. So we were reading last time, an abyss yawned suddenly beneath her heart. A vast and nameless fear dragged at her nerves as drags a wild beast its half-slaughtered prey. This is near the top of 534. Then rushing came its vast and fearful fount, a formless dread with shapeless, endless wings, filling the universe with its dangerous breath, a denser darkness than night could bear, enveloped the heavens and possessed the earth. So she's being enveloped by this dark force, this dark presence, a seeming void of existence. And then it assumes a voice and speaks. And we can continue from that point. So, Paula? I have created all. 14 lines down.
Okay, I got it. I have created all I devour. I am death, and the dark, terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black and naked in the world. I am Maya, and the universe is my cheat. I lay waste human happiness with my breath and slay the will to live, the joy to be that all may pass back into nothingness and only abide the eternal and absolute. For only the blank eternal can be true. All else is shadow and flash in mind's bright glass. Mind, hollow mirror in which ignorance sees a splendid figure of its own false self, and dreams it sees a glorious solid world. O soul, inventor of man's thoughts and hopes, thyself the invention of the moment's stream, illusion's center or subtle apex point, at last know thyself, from vain existence cease. A shadow of the negating absolute, the intolerant darkness traveled surging past and ebbed in her the formidable voice. It left behind her inner world laid waste. A barren silence weighed upon her heart. Her kingdom of delight was there no more. Only her soul remained, its emptied stage, awaiting the unknown eternal will.
Thank you. So it's interesting how Sri Aurobindo kind of introduced this voice a little bit earlier before Paula read at the bottom of 534. He says, a consciousness of being without its joy, empty of thought, incapable of bliss, that felt life blank and nowhere found a soul, a voice to the dumb anguish of the heart, conveyed a stark sense of unspoken words. In her own depths she heard the unuttered thought that made unreal the world and all life meant. So it seems as if it's kind of an unspoken word, an unuttered thought. It's something that she perceives and even articulated in detail, but kind of arising out of this emptiness or void. And it's conveying the sense that, Why are you looking at this world of forms and ideas? This is all unreal. So then it continues, as Paula has said, and it describes its kind of attributes. I am death and the dark, terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black and naked in the world. I am Maya, and the universe is my cheat. So it's as if all is arising out of this nothingness, out of death, and all returns back into it. It just lasts for a while, or actually it may just be an illusion that passes. For only the blank eternal can be true. All else is shadow and flash in mind's bright glass. Mind, hollow mirror in which ignorance sees a splendid figure of its own false self. In dreams it sees a glorious solid world. So even mind, it is represented as a hollow mirror, kind of an unreal mirror, showing the figure of a false self. Perhaps logically it doesn't make much sense, but. And then there's this very interesting line in which Sri Aurobindo seems to place this voice. He calls it a shadow of the negating absolute. So we see in the title of the canto, Nirvana and the all-negating absolute. This seems to be some kind of a shadow of that, kind of a, perhaps a twisted or false image or appearance of that all-negating absolute. A false form. But after this voice arises, her inner world is laid waste. All is kind of destroyed, emptied of significance. All her delight that she was feeling in her life with Satyavan dissolves into nothingness. Yeah. Mm. Now, this other kind of positive aspect of it is going to come forth. Huh? Right.
Absolute bliss, that void. But this void has that Kali side, which also undermines everything and makes it worse, in a sense, because you can get stuck in the other one. This one you will not get stuck in, I don't think, because you want to get out of the death and the destruction and all of that. So she will have to pull out of this second layer
So the positive layer is a worse trap.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, let's see, because he's going to
Yeah.
describe it
Yeah.
next. And UC can read.
Then from the heights a greater voice came down, the word that touches the heart and finds the soul, the voice of light after the voice of night. The cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply, a might of storm chased by the might of the sun. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues, and beat with a thunderous knock upon thy gates. Hide, while thou canst, thy treasure of separate self, behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till all of a vaster empire it grows part. But not for self alone the self is won. Content abide not with one conquered realm. Adventure all to make the world thine, to break into greater kingdom, turn thy force. Fear not to be nothing, that thou mayst be all. Ascend to the emptiness of the Supreme, that all in thee may reach its absolute. Accept to be small and human on the earth, interrupting thy newborn divinity, that man may find his utter self in God. If for thy own sake only thou hast come, an immortal spirit, into the mortal's world, to find thy luminous kingdom in God's dark, in the unconscious realm one shining state, one door in the ignorance opened upon light, why hast thou any need to come at all?
Thank you. Let's pause there. Now this voice, I'm not sure if it's a voice of this all-negating absolute. He describes it as heaven's reply. Maybe it's something coming from beyond, but inclusive of that all-negating absolute. Because in the beginning he even tells her, keep while you can your sense of separate self. Hide, don't get absorbed in this darkness of nothingness. Hide whilst thou canst thy treasure of separate self behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till of a vaster empire it grows part. But then it tells her to fear not, to be nothing, assent to the emptiness of the Supreme, that all in thee may reach its absolute. So this voice seems to be suggesting that there is this emptiness of the absolute, a certain state or aspect of the absolute that one must experience in order to become all, to unite with all. Perhaps to find that cosmic consciousness which comes in the next canto. Right. Right.
This is our need.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be a voice of wisdom guiding her through this experience.
But they never seem to come to the conclusion because you still have to go a little further.
Still have to
go further.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, perhaps there is no end point that we reach, but
usually she says something at the very end of these processes that sums it together, and then she moves on to like another layer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll see.
Yeah,
she does that. But something else that this voice is suggesting is that this emptiness is necessary in order to, again, I guess, maybe find that cosmic consciousness, but to go beyond your separate self. Because it says, if for thy own sake only thou hast come, why hadst thou any need to come at all? So in order for her to help in the enlightenment of others, she has to go through this. She could have her own kind of separate realization, perhaps, in this emptiness or void. But it's not for that she has come. So we'll continue, maybe Ramsha. Thou hast come.
Thou hast come down into a struggling world to aid a blind and suffering mortal race, to open to light the eyes that could not see, to bring down bliss into the heart of grief, to make thy life a bridge twixt earth and heaven, if thou wouldst save the toiling universe. The vast universal suffering feel as thine, thou must bear the sorrow that thou claimst to heal. The Daybringer must walk in darkest night. He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? If far he walks above mortality's head, how shall the mortal reach that too high path? If one of theirs they see scale heaven's peaks, men then can hope to learn that Titan climb. God must be born on earth and be as man, that man being human may grow even as God. He who would save the world must be one with the world, all suffering things contain in its heart space, and bear the grief and joy of all that lives. His soul must be wider than the universe and feel eternity as its very stuff, rejecting the moment's personality, know itself older than the birth of time.
The passage as a whole, it seems to refer especially to the avatar who comes, but perhaps not only the avatar, perhaps it's put forward as a kind of more general condition for all who would live this more affirmative spirituality that embraces the world and creation and would play a part in its uplifting. But clearly, Savitri is this special being, the Divine Mother incarnate. So she has come to bring down bliss into the heart of grief and to make life a bridge twixt earth and heaven. If thou wouldest save the toiling universe, the vast universal suffering feel as thine. Thou must bear the sorrow that thou claimest to heal. So he speaks especially to this sense of the avatar taking on the pain and suffering of the world, which was emphasized so much in Christianity, but also in other traditions, in Hinduism, and even in kind of the Greek, perhaps, mythology. He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? So, and it tells her that she must find that part of her being that's wider than the universe, feel eternity as its very stuff, rejecting the moment's personality, know itself older than the birth of time, creation, an incident in its consciousness. How vast that line is. And then this Arcturus and Belphegor, grains of fire circling in a corner of its boundless self. I was curious about these. This Arcturus, of course, is one of the brightest stars in the sky. But I looked up this Belphegor, and it was not a star, or it wasn't at least in the 100 brightest stars in the sky. It's actually a demon, and it was referred to in Milton's Paradise Lost, I guess. So probably among the rungs of hell or something, it was there. I'm talking about Belphegor. So I don't know if Sri Aurobindo confused the term and it's referring to a star, or he's referring to this demon. I don't know. He certainly had read Milton. And then a few lines later, he says, the world's destruction, a small transient storm, in the calm infinity it has become. Yeah, it could be. Kind of opposite, polar opposites. Right. Yeah, he may be showing the two poles of existence or something. So let's continue, B.
If thou wouldest a little loosen the vast chain, draw back from the world that the idea has made. The mind's selection from the infinite, thy mind's selection from the infinite, thy senses' gloss on the infinitesimal's dance. Then shalt thou know how the great bondage came. Banish all thought from thee and be God's void. Then shalt thou uncover the unknowable, and the superconscient conscious grow on thy tops. Infinity's vision through thy gaze shall pierce. Thou shalt look into the eyes of the unknown, find the hid truth in things seen null and false. Behind things known, discover mysteries rear. Thou shalt be one with God's bare reality, and the miraculous world he has become, and the diviner miracle still to be, when nature, who is now unconscious God, translucent grows to the eternal's light. Her seeing his sight, her walk his steps of power, and life is filled with spiritual joy, and matter is the Spirit's willing bride. Consent to be nothing and none. Dissolve time's work. Cast off thy mind. Step back from form and name. Annul thyself, that only God may be.
It continue a little further.
Thus spoke the mighty and uplifting voice, and Savitri heard. She bowed her head and mused, plunging her deep regard into herself, in her soul's privacy in the silent night. Aloof and standing back, detached and calm, a witness of the drama of herself, a student of her own interior scene, she watched the passion and the toil of life, and heard in the crowded thoroughfares of mind the unceasing tread and passage of her thoughts. All she allowed to rise, that chose to stir, calling, compelling not, forbidding not, she left all to the process formed in time and the free initiative of nature's will.
Thank you. It's interesting how he begins this. If thou wouldest a little loosen the vast chain, draw back from the world that the idea has made. So this world that we perceive, it's created by mind. And he's saying, draw back from that. Draw back from this mind-created world. It's only a selection from the infinite, and senses gloss on the infinitesimals dance. That kind of brings it back to what quantum physics or something, that our senses are kind of weaving this sense of a world out of the dance of subatomic particles or waves of energy. Banish all thought from thee and be God's void. So he's suggesting we need to draw back from that whole process of mind which creates around it its universe, and to become that emptiness of God. Not that God is only emptiness, but it has this empty aspect. Then shalt thou uncover the unknowable, and the superconscious conscious grow on thy tops. Infinity's vision through thy gaze shall pierce. Thou shalt look into the eyes of the unknown, find the hid truth in things, seen, null, and false. Behind things known, discover mysteries rear. We have this sense of knowing our world, or a sense that, we know people, we know events and things in this world. But behind that also there's this whole mystery that we don't see. So if we can draw back from that appearance, enter into this void, then we can discover the reality that's behind things. Then thou shalt be one with God's bare reality and the miraculous world he has become, and the diviner miracle still to be. When nature, who is now unconscious God, translucent grows to the eternal's light, her seeing his sight, her walk his steps of power. So nature's seeing shall be the eternal's, the divine sight, her movements his steps of power. And life will be filled with a spiritual joy, and matter the Spirit's willing bride. So again, the command, consent to be nothing and none. Dissolve time's work. Cast off thy mind. Step back from form and name. Annul thyself, that only God may be. So now she begins this process, following this voice's command, and draws back from the movements of her thought and mind, her perceptions, and watches as the witness, observer, a witness of the drama of herself, a student of her own interior scene. She watched the passion and the toil of life, and heard in the crowded thoroughfares of mind the unceasing tread and passage of her thoughts. And then, perhaps key to this process, all she allowed to rise, that chose to stir, calling, compelling not, forbidding not. She stands back a witness and just allows nature to proceed in its play. She left all to the process formed in time and the free initiative of nature's will. She's really stepping back from nature, from Prakriti into the Purusha, observing disinterestedly, not choosing this or that, rejecting this or that, just watching it. So we continue.
She left all to the process formed in time and the free initiative of nature will.
Excuse me, I'm not sure where you're reading, but you should start at thus following the complex human play.
Thus, following the complex human play, she heard the proper voice behind the sense, perceived the original liberated set, and the organ themes of the composer force. All she beheld that surges for man depth, the animal instinct prolonging meets life tree, the impulse that wither to the heart, and passion thunder crash sweeping the nerves. She saw the power that stare from above, and the wildless light that liberated the soul. But most her gaze pursued the birth of thought. After creeps from the look of surface mind, she pushed not to serve of official case. The issue of forms form the office of the brain, its factory of thought, sound and soundless words, and voice stored within unheard by man. It meets an treasury of singing coin. Those were but country in mind's symbol game. Gramophone's dish, reproduction film, a list of sing, a chipper and chord. In our unseen subtle body, thought is born. Up there it enters from the cosmic field. Up from the soul stepped out a naked a thought, luminous with mystery, lips and wonderful eye. Or from her heart emerged smoke burning face, and looked for life and love, passionate truth. Aspire to even the embrace the world, or let the fancy like a flitting moon across the dual sky of man common day, amidst of doubtful gratitude of earth's lore, to the classical beauty of faith gave form, as if a flower prints in a dingy room, laughed in golden vase one living rose.
Thank you. Pause there. So Sri Aurobindo describes what happens when one steps back into this poise of the witness soul, observing the thoughts and the movements of the nature. And one of the things that she experiences is that she heard the prompter's voice behind the scenes. So it's as if there is this prompter, like on the stage, a prompter may kind of signal the actor what to say if he forgets his lines. So there's prompters that are kind of pushing us sometimes to act or to speak in a particular way. So she sees those forces or beings behind in the occult realms of our being that push us, that influence us to speak and act. Perceive the original libretto's set. Now, this libretto is the text of a dramatic musical work, such as an opera. So she sees kind of the whole drama as it will play out. She sees the text of what is to be sung, to be played out in the outer nature, and the organ theme of the composer force. All she beheld that surges from man's depths, the animal instincts, prowling midlife's trees, the impulses that whisper to the heart, and passion's thunder chase sweeping the nerves. And from below, she saw the powers that stare from the abyss, the dark forces from deep down, and the wordless light that liberates the soul. She sees all these forces from the dark inconscient up to the superconscient light, and all the mid-ranges of the vital and mental being, all influencing this outer scene, this outer drama of life that we perceive. But then he speaks more of this birth of thought, franchised from the look of surface mind. That is, she's freed from the look of the surface mind, and she's seeing behind what's leading it, what's guiding it. She paused not to survey the official case. She's not pausing to listen to what the surface mind is saying about the world. She's going deeper. And then she's describing, or Sri Aurobindo describes what these surface thoughts are like. They're the issue of forms from the office of the brain, its factory of thought sounds and soundless words and voices stored within, unheard by men, its mint and treasury of shining coin. It's as if all these thoughts are just like coins, symbols minted by the mind, not in themselves real things, but kind of symbols or counters in a game. A counter is like a symbol that we use to to move places across a board in a game. These were but counters in mind's symbol game, a gramophone's discs. Sure, Arbindo's writing this a while back when we had gramophones instead of CDs and the internet. A reproductions film, a list of signs, a cipher, and a code. Now, a cipher is a secret method of writing in which sometimes letters may be transposed or substituted with others, and that you need a key to kind of uncover some other kind of intrusions of higher thought, that come from above. Oft from her soul stepped out a naked thought, luminous, with the mysteried lips and wonderful eyes. Oft from her heart emerged some burning face and looked for life and love and passionate truth, aspired to heaven or embraced the world, or led the fancy like a fleeting moon across the dull sky of man's common days. These too are not the ultimate truth, but thoughts and feelings that may come from a higher or a deeper part of our being, but yet which seem wonderful and more beautiful than the doubtful certitudes of earth's lore. To the celestial beauty of faith gave form, as if at flower prints in a dingy room laughed in one golden vase, one living rose. Laughed in a golden vase, one living rose. It's a beautiful line. As if in this dingy room, there's in the center one beautiful rose. Laughing at the dingy prints on the wall, on the wallpaper. There might be images of designs or flowers or something. So we'll continue. Nitya.
A thaumaturgist sat in her heart's deep, compelled the forward stride, the upward look, till wonder leaped into the illumined breast, and life grew marvelous with transfiguring hope. A seeing will pondered between the brows. Thoughts, glistening angels, stood behind the brain in flashing armor, folding hands of prayer, and poured heaven's rays into the earthly form. Imaginations flamed up from her breast, unearthly beauty, touches of surpassing joy, and plans of miracle, dreams of delight. Around her navel lotus clustering close, her large sensations of the teeming worlds streamed their dumb movements of the unformed idea, invading the small sensitive flower of the throat. They brought their mute, unuttered resonances to kindle the figures of a heavenly speech. Below, desires formed their wordless wish, and longings of physical sweetness and ecstasy translated into the accents of a cry, their grasp on objects and their clasp on souls. Her body's thoughts climbed from her conscious limbs and carried their yearnings to its mystic crown, where nature's murmurs meet the ineffable. But for the mortal prisoned in outward mind, all must present their passports at its door. Disguised they must don the official cap and mask, or pass as manufacturers of the brain, unknown their secret truth and hidden source. Only to the inner mind they speak direct, put on a body and assume a voice, their passage seen, their message heard and known, their birthplace and their natal mark revealed, and stand confessed to an immortal sight, are nature's messengers to the witness soul.
Thank you. Here again we have reference to the opening of the chakras, which she had experienced in the last canto after the finding of the soul. They all had blossomed and became expressive of the divinity within. And here he's describing this again. So this thaumaturgist is a performer of miracles. It sat in her heart's deep, perhaps in her soul, compelled the forward stride, the upward look, till wonder leaped into the illumined breast, and life grew marvelous with transfiguring hope. And then we see the different chakras. A seeing will pondered between the brows. Thoughts, glistening angels, stood behind the brain in flashing armor, folding hands of prayer, and poured heaven's rays into the earthly form. You see how all parts of her being are opened to the divinity. Imaginations flamed up from her breast, unearthly beauty, touches of surpassing joy, and plans of miracle, dreams of delight. Around her navel lotus clustered her large sensations of the teeming worlds, streamed their dun movements of unformed idea, invading the small sensitive flower of the throat chakra. They brought their mute unuttered resonances to kindle the figures of a heavenly speech. The throat chakra gives expression to the expressive mind, gives form to the mind. Well, the chakras are referred to in these ways as sometimes circles of energy and sometimes as lotuses. So flowers and lotuses are just There's the 1,000-petaled lotus, right? But I think all are kind of referred to sometimes as this opening of a flower, you know? Like, there's a flower bud. In some places he refers to kind of a closed bud, then opens. No, I don't think so. I think he's referring to a tradition. Like a verb, flowering. Flowering means kind of opening like a flower. And then he speaks of, but for the mortal prisoned in outward mind, these different forces from the subtle realms that find expression in these open chakras, they kind of have to disguise themselves and present themselves as if they're that outward mind's own thoughts or manufactures. So they present their false passports as if they, were made by this outward mind itself. Because the outward mind doesn't perceive these inner parts of the being, these inner sources. Only to the inner mind they speak direct, put on a body, and assume a voice. These forces may also be not only impersonal, but assume a form and a voice. So let's read the last passage for today.
Okay.
Impenetrable, withheld from mortal sense, the inner chambers of the spirit's house. Disclose to her their happenings and their guests. Eyes look through services in the invisible world, and through the secrecy of unseen door, there came into mind's little front and room thoughts that enlarge our limited human range. Lift the ideas half quenched of sinking torch, or peer through the finite and the infinite, a sight open upon the invisible, and sensed the shapes that mortal eyes see not, the sounds that mortal listening cannot hear, the blissful sweetness of the intangible touch, the objects that to us are empty air, are there the stuff of daily experience, and the common pabulum of sense and thought, the beings of the subtle realms appear, and scenes concealed behind our earthly scenes. She saw the life of remote continents, and these bands deafened not to voices far. She felt the movements closed in unknown minds. The past events occurred before her eyes. The great world's thoughts were part of her own thought. The feeling down forever and unshared, the ideas that never found utterance, the dim subconscious incoherent hints, let bear a meaning twisted, deep and strange, the bizarre secret of their fumbling speech, their links with unveiling reality.
Thank you. Let's pause there. When Savitri draws back from the outer senses, from the outer mind, and she peers within into her subtle being, she sees and feels and senses all these inner parts of our being. Beings are there, voices are there, and they're all having their influence on the outer being, expressing themselves in some way in the outer being. She sees this whole vast world of beings and things hidden from our outer sight. Senses, shapes that mortal eyes see not, the sounds that mortal listening cannot hear, the blissful sweetness of the intangible's touch, the objects that to us are empty air, are there the stuff of daily experience. You can imagine Sri Aurobindo sitting in his chair and just looking, but he's experiencing all of these things in the inner planes of being. No, I don't think that's. He was saying for the mortal mind, or for those imprisoned in the mortal mind. So those who are imprisoned in the outer mind, these influences, these beings from within, from the subtle planes, they have to give a false passport to get into the outer mind, because the outer mind is saying, well, I think all of this stuff. It doesn't see anything coming from within, from these subtle planes. It only thinks that it's thinking these thoughts itself. These are my thoughts. These are my feelings. It's caused by this person, telling me this. And it doesn't see this whole vast realm within. So they give a false passport so that the outer mind thinks, oh yeah, he caused this, or I thought this. I think that's what he's saying. It's not in order to get somewhere higher. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. Mm. Mm. Yeah, the ego takes kind of credit for everything, but actually when you stand back and just let nature operate, then you can observe how nature is just working independent of your own will or your own outer thinking. It just goes on its own. And then you just observe it. What is it doing? And then where do those thoughts come from? So you look deeper. But even there's some interesting things referred to here. The past events occurred before her eyes. So she even can see into the past. The great world's thoughts were part of her own thought. The feelings dumb forever and unshared, the ideas that never found an utterance. So she sees also all these kind of secret things that maybe you seek for expression in some way, but maybe don't find suitable instruments in which to give expression. So we stop there for today. We're out of time. Well, I think we can refrain from that surface activity that hides, that serves as a veil over all of this. So if we can just become very quiet, stand back from that, then the veil is removed, and then we can see. So that can be our contribution. We still express these thoughts. We see the deeper forces of nature that are expressing through you. You think you're doing it, but actually these deeper forces are at play.
Her body's thought climbed from her conscious limbs and carried their yearnings to its mystic ground, where nature's murmurs meet the ineffable.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.